No need to explain, Commissioner. We saw the whole sordid affair. Those criminals will be brought to justice, or I'll know the reason why. We're on our way.
Hurry, Caped Crusader. Whoever you may be under that cowl of yours, you paladin of virtue, you're our only hope.
To the Batcave.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave Podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and we've got another special episode from the files of the Batcomputer here on the Batcave Podcast. And joining me for another one of these special episodes is the man himself from 13thdimension.com, Mr. Dan Greenfield. Hey, Dan.
Hey, John.
So, okay, here's the deal. This weekend, we had the premiere at New York Comic Con of the return of the Caped Crusaders animated movie. And at that premiere, Adam West also appeared doing roundtable interviews with various news outlets. I was going to attend. I'd gotten an invite thanks to you. And at the last moment, I couldn't make it because, as John Lennon says, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. So you still went, obviously, and you got a chance to sit with Adam, and I'm assuming with others. Set this all up for us. How did this all work?
Sure. What they did was they put us all in an interview room with about 7 or 8 tables, whatever it was, literally round tables, and basically 5 or 6 media members would sit at the table, and they'd have one spot left open for whoever the guest would be. And in this particular case, it was Adam West and also James Tucker and Michael Jelinek, who were the co-writers of the movie and also producers, and Rick Morales, who was the director. And those names may be familiar to listeners because they also work on a lot of the DC animated projects and shows like Batman Brave and the Bold and other things. So those guys are very, very well-known names in the world of animation. And then, of course, the true guest of honor, Adam West. And so every 10 or 15 minutes or so, they would cycle through. So there were about 5 or 6 people, and then Adam West was sitting at one of the spots of the table. And it really was just a free-for-all. It was very informal, very relaxed. And he just basically sat with us and answered every question that we had. And he was terrific. He was in his element. He was relaxed. He was very genial. I've interviewed him before, and I'd actually say that this was, in a way, his most, I guess candid is the right word, because after when you're answering a lot of the same questions for 50 years, it starts to feel canned. And while there were definitely, he was ready for some questions and he had his pat answers, he was more thoughtful than I've seen him in other settings. So it was good.
Yeah, now that's one thing. You've got Adam West in front of you. And I remember when we interviewed Burt Ward, I wanted to make absolutely certain, as best I could, I don't know if I always succeeded, to make sure I didn't present to him the same pat questions or ideas that he heard before. So, how does that work then, especially since you're sharing this time with several other media people?
Well, that's the thing. When you're in that situation, one of the things you always try to do, and you try to do this in any interview, but particularly it's a real challenge with someone like an Adam West, who probably has heard everything that has, every possible question. There's a new way in because there's a new project, so there are some fresh elements. And then when you're in that situation, you're just being polite. People will ask their questions, and you know that you're going to get answers that you've heard before. But so be it, and that's where editing comes in and what have you. In my particular case, I asked him a question that was a throwaway, or at least I thought it was a throwaway, because I assume I was personally curious but assumed it had been asked before, but hadn't been asked frequently because I certainly didn't know the answer. And he actually stopped and he paused and he turns to me and he says, I have never been asked that question before. And then he clapped, and I was like, I was actually blown away by that. It was like one of those proud moments and it was unexpected because I didn't think that it was. Sometimes you do try to ask that question. You try to formulate the question and you set it up and you see if it works. In this case, that wasn't it. I wasn't trying to go for that. I just figured it's something that I hadn't heard and just assumed it had been asked and maybe I'd missed it or whatever. And everybody at the table was like, ooh, ah. It was funny. It was really cute. And I was, as my son said later, he says, 10-year-old Dan, must have been, or as you put it, early 70s Dan must have been having a meltdown. And early 70s Dan was having a meltdown. I'll tell you that. I even posted it on Facebook and people were like, really, really had a really moving response to the whole thing. So you'll hear the question. I'm not going to say it here because otherwise, why continue? But you'll hear it in the audio in this podcast because you'll hear the question and his answer was really thoughtful too, which also made me really happy. He didn't give a pat answer. He gave a really good answer. So that's a little tease for your listeners here.
Now, I'm going to say that when you hear the interview, there are other things going on at the time. It's at Comic-Con. I have done the best I can to sort of filter out some of that background noise and to also boost Adam's audio. I actually did think, though, in listening to the original, that Adam sounded great. I mean, in terms of audio quality.
Yeah, well, we all had our microphones or our devices right in front of him. So, the only challenge there, and as forgive us, listeners, if it does get at any time hard to listen, it's just that you're in a room of 50 people and everybody's talking, so you're hopeful that you get everything. When you're sitting right there, you're taking notes and you're getting things, but you don't know if everything is going to come out 100% in the recording. But, I listened to it myself also, and I thought it came out pretty well. So I think your readers are in for a treat to hear Adam just kind of talking off the cuff about this.
Exactly. So why don't we get to it and let's play the interview. And when we're done, we'll talk some more about the experience.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to keep up.
So, yes.
Thanks so much for being here.
I wish I could. Well, how you doing?
Great. I first got to ask, what was your all-time favorite episode?
Number one. Yeah. It was the first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Our pilot, so-called. That two-parter, Hide Diddle Riddle, I think. Yeah. And I loved it. I really enjoyed Frank Gorshin as Riddler. And, of course, to get the chance to set the tone in a comedic way for the show.
Yes.
Going into the discotheque and saying, I shouldn't wish to be conspicuous.
Yes.
Things like that.
Right.
And I think we pretty much hit the mark. And people loved it. And I enjoyed it because I'm the one, mostly, that fought for the comedy. The tongue-in-cheek, satirical elements.
Were you familiar with Batman in the animated form, the 90s animated series, and the work of like Kevin Conroy as a character?
Not then, because I preceded them. Oh, you mean afterward?
Yeah.
Yes, to an extent. I was so pissed off that they didn't ask me to do it. but I became somewhat familiar. As a matter of fact, people ask me about, do you read the comics yourself? Well, I frankly stopped reading comic books when I was his age. No, when I was about 12.
Yeah.
But you see, it was a different time and different comics. Now the graphic novels and the artwork is so incredibly good that I go through them just to see what's happening. And I do see, pieces of the new movie. new movies, the darker ones, just to see what's happening. And then I realized that we were.
Mr. West.
That's it.
Well, actually, on Batman the Animated Series, you were the Grey Ghost. You did that.
Yeah,
You did a part.
Warner's is talking about maybe me doing a Grey Ghost animated series.
That'd be cool.
Well, that's what people say, and I love the character. I wouldn't mind doing that. Is that for me?
Yeah, you can keep it.
Mr. West, what made you come back to do The Return of the Caped Crusaders?
With this, the paycheck.
Response.
And, the challenge of really doing it again.
Yeah.
Trying to have fun with it. Today's the new movies. Batman is very full of vengeance and deep-seated angst and so on. And they're very dark. My Batman was just fun.
Of course.
I try to make it funny and fun. I'm the happy Batman, for God's sakes.
What was it like getting back together with Burt Ward and Julie Newmar?
Well, it was interesting in that, as I expected, they immediately got back into that chemistry with me. And I thought, that's wonderful. Because, like, if Burt and I will do a Comic-Con, it's a medium. I mean, he may hate me. I may hate him. But as soon as we're together performing on the stage, it's back. Yeah.
And he's still
it's
there.
fun. Not that we hate each other, but I'm saying, we're different ages, different lifestyles, and attitudes. But it's there. It's there.
Very nice.
Am I boring you yet?
No, you're not. Not at all.
Do you have any advice for future Batman?
Will you applaud when we finish?
Of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Teasing Gary. He said it's the only time it's ever happened in a press Go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Do you have advice for future Batman?
Advice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Enough violence. And let the costume work for you. And put a little humor in it. Because I think it's about time to relieve that unrelenting kind of attitude of vengeance and I can't take it anymore. I'm going home and I'm going to suck my thumb.
What was it like to recite, like the dialogue you did in '66, like, crossing the street and, things like that Batman would correct Robin all the time?
I loved it because it was funny. Nobody would talk like Batman the way he was. And I found it really funny. And so did he, and so did the audience. So it gave me a chance to play a more straight-ahead Batman from moment to moment. And to give the kids little homilies, little ethical lessons, whatever, that they really picked up. And most of them didn't become murderers, rapists.
So it's true.
Over the years, you've been to a lot of conventions and stuff like that. You've seen a lot of the fans. What have they asked you to repeat from the original series the most?
To repeat?
What lines from the original series?
As part of a scene or something?
Yeah.
It's funny, when I walk on a stage with one of these things, they say, "Oh, do the Batusi, do the Batusi." Lord, and they'll want to know how we did the wall climbs, for example. And I have to spill it and say, well, we put the building on its side. And then we attached fishing filament line to the capes for gravity. And somebody said, well, we can see that. And I said, that's okay. Let the audience see it. It's funny. Then the audience kind of knows. They think maybe. So that worked, yeah.
You work, excuse me, you work with a lot of guest stars, and that was one of the big selling points of the show. Who do you regret not having had a chance to work with on the show, or who are some of the people you wish you got a chance to be on Batman with?
That's a question I've never had.
Well, thank you.
One day, Kim Novak called, my assistant, and said, do you think he would have lunch with me? Should I spill?
Yes, very much.
And so I put on my bathrobe over my costume, took off the cowl, up pulls this Jaguar convertible with her driving. And I said, oh my God, I'm the luckiest bat in the world. I got in the car and we had lunch. And we had a good time. And she drove me back to the stage. And I just had a feeling that she really wanted to do the show with me. That's all, of course. But she wanted to do the show. And she'd just come off, I think, that wonderful movie with Jimmy Stewart called Vertigo.
Yeah.
So I was quite impressed, and I would have loved to, been worked with her, as one of the characters. I think Henry Fonda. Yeah, maybe Kirk Douglas. And if he'd been alive, Robert Donat. I don't know whether you remember the name Robert Donat. He was so good. But the guy, it was my understanding, had terrible, emphysema, whatever, lung problems. And he died, very young. But he was really good. Who else? Maybe Louis B. Mayer. Yes, to kind of show him what it's like out there. I know a lot of people are so good, but we had the best. Cesar Romero as Pinky Baby, and Frank Ocean was with him. Cesar Romero with that energy. I really was lucky to work with these people. And I learned from them. You work face to face, or cowl to face with them. And it was wonderful the way, because they listened. And they weren't selfish performers. So it was great for the back and forth. You look for that in the scene.
We just heard that.
Excuse me, I'll have a seat. Yeah.
We just heard that Ben Affleck's Batman movie is coming out, maybe called The Batman. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not too sensitive. Well, yes, I think it's smart because it's simple. And it certainly puts the focus on him as the Batman. But he knows, as you folks and everyone, that I'm the classic Batman. So I don't give a damn. I think it's smart for him to call him the Batman. I beg your pardon? Okay, then I'm going to drop the D next time. Just plain Batman.
There you go.
Mr. West, I just wanted to ask you a question here. If the planets were realigned again that allowed you to make a second installment, would you go for it?
Wait for it?
He knows something.
Yeah.
He knows something. I have a gag order. But tonight, let me clue you. If you're there tonight, or this afternoon, late, whenever they show the movie, you will learn something that'll blow your mind.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Burt Ward actually said that the movie is going to shock viewers. Yeah. He says it's and to use your term, blow your mind. He said the same thing, that the movie will blow your mind. What about this movie, and what should fans expect?
They can expect the usual excellence to which they become so accustomed. The Batman.
There you go.
Yeah.
I have to actually commend you on some of your work other than Batman. On the Outer Limits, I thought you had guested it once on there, and you were awesome.
Thanks.
And also a little movie that is also one of my personal hidden classics, Robinson Crusoe on Mars.
Oh, yeah.
So I really like the work you did in that.
The Monkey and Me and Paul Mantee.
That's right. That's right.
Well, any questions?
I just have one little request. If you could say hi to my father. He's a big fan of yours since he was a kid.
The nerve. Where's your father?
He's home.
Is he?
Yes.
What's his name?
Carlos.
Who?
Carlos.
Hey, Carlos. Mucho gusto, baby. How are you, Carlos?
All right, thank you.
Taking you away.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. You do get a hand. Of course we love him. He's Batman.
Thanks,
He doesn't look like Batman.
Yeah.
He's Batman. Sorry, Michael Keaton. Sorry, Michael Keaton. He's Batman.
He's Batman. Oh.
Let me take my water.
Sparkling water.
Hello, New York Comic Con. Now that you've seen the return of the Caped Crusaders and loved it, I know you loved it. I loved it. You must have loved it. I know you can't wait to watch me go boldly where no Batman villain has gone before. Next year, in Batman versus Two-Face, that's right. William Shatner and Adam West together again. Two old icons in one movie. Same Bat DVD, same Bat Blu-ray. Coming next year.
First and foremost, Dan, I mean, I know you do this anyway for 13th Dimension, but I want to say thank you for sharing this with the Batcave podcast listeners.
Oh, you're welcome. I wanted, I really, as this was going on, I just, I like to be able to present Q&As on the website all the time, and it's one of the things I really enjoy doing. But there is something about being able to hear it and to hear his, kind of hear the wheels turning when he's talking. So I wanted to make sure that, excuse me, that your listeners got a chance to hear it, because as I tell anybody, this is the best Batman 66 podcast there is. So I want to make sure that those listeners get to hear it.
Well, thank you for that. There were a lot of surprises at New York Comic Con in relation to Batman 66. And if you were over on the Facebook page for the Batcave podcast, you saw that. But if you're not on Facebook, if you didn't get a chance to go there, I got to urge you, head over to 13thdimension.com and check it out, because you'll be surprised just how... it's funny. A few years ago, we coined the phrase the genesis or the rising of Bionics with the $6 Million Man DVDs released. But it is really a reawakening of Batman 66 for what's going on in terms of merchandising and in terms of new stories, material moving forward with this movie, and dare I say it, more.
Yeah, there's there's a the great part is that there is going to be a sequel to this movie, and the fact that they're going to bring Two-Face into it. And I saw the movie in a crowd at the premiere at New York Comic Con, and the crowd loved it. I mean, we'll talk about this in a different segment, but it was extremely well received. And of course, the kicker to the whole thing, which had everybody roaring at the end, was when they revealed that not only is there going to be a sequel and that the villain's going to be Two-Face, but that Two-Face is going to be played by William Shatner.
Yeah, and
people went bananas, myself included, because I'm a huge William Shatner fan. I'm a huge fan of the original series Star Trek. It is perfect casting. It was a brilliant move on their part, and it just keeps it going. The idea of Adam West and William Shatner going toe to toe, as it were, is great. So there's that, and then of course there's going to be Batman '66, which we knew was going to keep going as a comic book, but and that they were going to do these as special events. But as a lot of people have been hoping for, Batman '66 meeting Wonder Woman '77.
Yeah,
and so that's another one that just has got a lot of people really, really excited. In fact, we were speculating among ourselves before the Shatner announcement, because as you'll hear in the audio, Adam West will say that the announcement that they're going to have at the panel is going to blow people's minds. We were speculating offline that maybe it was going to be Batman '66 and Wonder Woman '77, and that Linda Carter was going to. But they obviously had a plan in place. They had the comic book doing Wonder Woman '77. They did, and who's to say they couldn't do another movie after this one anyway? Because if as you'll hear in the audio. Success breeds success, and if people keep buying and people get, so long as the cast members want to do it, they'll keep doing it, I think, and they definitely have one more to go, and hopefully, there's another opportunity after that if all goes well.
Yeah, hopefully. It's funny because I'm thinking in terms of I'd be really curious to see, and I know this sounds crazy considering we always talk about how great the comic book villains were on the TV show, that I actually would like to see cartoon versions of, say, King Tut or Egghead. I know it's crazy.
Not crazy. And when viewers see this movie, all I'll say, because this is going to be posted before the movie is in theaters, I guess. And also online, is that there are a lot more surprises in Return of the Caped Crusaders than you probably expect.
Ooh, okay. All right. So before we go, 13thdimension.com, before we give anybody the idea that it is a Batman 66 site, it is absolutely not. I mean, Dan is a big fan and covers it extensively, but there's a whole lot more to it, right?
Yeah, we covered comic books yesterday and today. I mean, new stuff every week. Plus, we write about comic books on different. I mean, you name it, we write about it. Also, pop culture, television, movies, and what have you. This being October, if you're a big monster fan, for example, we're running every weekend. Rob Kelly does. He does something for us called Real Retro Cinema, and we're doing the Universal Monsters. There's a ton of, speaking of Shatner, we spent a lot of this year doing the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, so you can find a lot of Star Trek stuff, including interviews with William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols and George Takei, all of that on the website. So yeah, while Batman 66 is first in my heart, there's a ton of other stuff on there. And if you're also a big comic book fan, you'll find stuff with Neil Adams and other great creators. And it's if you're looking for, if you're listening to this show and you also are into comics and other TV shows of this generation, I invite you to check us out, because I think you'll find some other things that you would like.
Very cool. And that's 13th Dimension, the number 13, Dimension.com.
Yep.
So, Dan, once again, thank you very much for this.
Oh, sure, John. I as I've always said, I love coming on the show, and any chance I get to do it, I'll take it.
Well, guess what? You've got a couple of more chances here. Because, folks, this week we're going to be focusing on the movie. We've got this episode here now. We're just wrapping up. In a couple of days, Dan and I will be back offering quick thoughts on seeing the movie in the theater. It's not going to be the full-blown review with sound clips and all like the way I usually do the other reviews. That'll come a little bit down the line after more people have had a chance to watch the movie, because there are those who don't want to hear spoilers, and we might slip a few even in the review, even though I'll try and be as spoiler free as possible. So we'll have a quick sort of down and dirty quick thoughts on it, and then a few days after that, we've got our interviews, or our roundtable interviews that Dan did with the producers of the movie as well. So this entire week is going to be dedicated to the return of the Caped Crusaders.
I think I'm going to put a costume on and start running around the house.
Yeah. Plus, in addition, folks, another episode of The Hornet's Sting will be out. And yes, I realize this is sort of bumping it, but next week we'll get back into it with the 2-part Shame review from the 3rd season, I promise. So until next time, folks, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, citizens, Dan, take care.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave Podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com, or by phone at 888-866-9010. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com, that's Libsyn.com, or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.